Moved to Madison, Tennessee, which is where I've spent my whole life, in Tennessee, when she was pregnant with me. And I spent my whole life serving in church. My dad and I were the people that went and picked up the little old ladies and took them to church for sermons. My parents helped start Davidson Academy. It was Madison Christian at the time at my church. I went to school at church. We were open. We were there every day. The doors were open. And in the midst of all of that, while my dad was a deacon, my mom stayed home, I'm the baby of 4 kids, my oldest brother was sexually abusing all 3 of us. It had started before this picture was done at 4 years old. So here I am, surrounded by God, surrounded by people who I know would have helped me, and never told a word, never told a soul. And I didn't know at the time that my brother and sister were also being abused by my brother. And let's complicate that a little and add an alcoholic mom who had her own stories of abuse and own stories of years and years of heartache in her own life, who knew what was going on and chose not to help me. So that little girl in that picture was fighting for her life without uttering a word. And I've had to face a lot of things in writing this book. But the first question everybody asks me is, well, why didn't you say anything? And when you are hurting that deeply and you feel so broken, you don't want anybody to see you. And I certainly put on a mask that it has taken me 48 years to pull off. And that's what this book became about for me. So I wanted to start there, and I want you to think about that little girl, because although I have no notes, and I wasn't sure what God was going to tell me to talk to you fine ladies about, I did want you to think about that little girl, because I'm going to read just the introduction to this book, and then I want to tell you a little bit about my story, okay? Welcome to the craziness I call my life. Welcome to a story of sadness, loss, brokenness, betrayal, survival, enduring love, and faith. And right when it looks the darkest, you find a little humor. I've spent a long time thinking about writing my story, but I really struggled with how to tell it. How do I tell a story that may never tie neatly into a bow? How do I speak about forgiveness and healing when I don't feel it every day? I've come to the conclusion that even if no one else ever reads this, I need to write it down for myself. I want to write it down for my kids. I want them to look back over my life and know me. That's such a funny statement because I've spent my whole life making sure no one really knew the real me. I've gone to great lengths to only let people see the version of me I created for them. That is my why. I want to be known. I want to quit hiding behind what I always believed were my flaws, because that is who I am. I'm a beautiful mess who has finally come to the realization that hiding parts of me will always make me feel less. I'm an ever-evolving portrayal of the battles I've won, the battles I've lost, and the ones I've decided to run from. Love me or hate me, I want to be known for who I am. I'm a survivor. In my life, I've been a victim of circumstances that could have defined me. I've been a victim of childhood sexual abuse, a victim of severe emotional abuse, and a victim of domestic abuse. I've lost almost everyone close to me in my immediate family. I've survived through 3 failed marriages, and I've raised my 3 children on my own until now. Each circumstance has shaped me into the person I choose to be today. I choose to love unconditionally and not let the people who hurt me define me. I no longer run from a single one of these scars. I embrace them. Those scars have made me a better mother, a better wife, a better friend, and a much better person. I no longer get up and look in the mirror to prepare for battle as I start my day. I look in the mirror and see a reflection of a woman who is loved, and most importantly, loves who she sees, flaws and all. That journey took 48 years from that picture to that book. And it was not a pretty journey. It was difficult. It was covered in rocks and boulders, and I was covered over my head in water a lot of that time. But what I also had in every one of those moments was someone God put in my life at the right moment, at the right time, with the right thing to say to me, to be there for me in a way I could have never asked for. It wasn't, I'd like to tell you I was down on my hands and knees, and I was so prepared that I was telling God, this is what I need you to put in my path today. This is what I need. This is where I'm going. No. I was surviving from day to day, sometimes happy, sometimes with great, amazing things going on, but always with that little girl. Because no matter what I tried to do, no matter how many times I tried to shove all those things that happened to me in a closet and shut the door and go, you know what, I'm moving on with my life. I am saved. I'm good. I was baptized in the 2nd grade. I spent every summer doing backyard Bible clubs for the Southern Baptist Association. I was surrounded by godly people. Surrounded. And I thank the Lord, out of all the things that could have happened, that I had all those people in my life. Because now I realize that they were that person that was keeping my head just above water most of the time. Because fast forward, that little girl, she goes to high school, and she makes a lot of interesting choices there. And then she leaves high school, and she decides to run away. I ran off to Canada. You want to talk about how far you can run at 18 years old? In 1989. That's how old I am now. I ran to Canada. I'm going to get away from this family. I'm going to get away from all these things because I didn't know how to deal with it. And I ran as far and as hard as I could, and then I came back with my tail between my legs, back to that same family dynamic. So we finally, at that point, as an adult, 18, 19 years old, told my dad. And this man who had loved me, who's the one person that I could hold away from all the things that had happened, he didn't know. If he knew, the world would stop. Didn't do a thing. He cried. And here I am. What am I going to do with this? So, what do most wounded warrior women do? We find another person to fix. So what I found another man I was going to run in, I was going to fix. And I stayed with that man for 20 years. We had 3 kids, miserable. And during those 20 years of being cheated on and being abused, I lost my sister, I lost my brother, and I lost my dad. And God left here the one woman who knew what was happening to me and chose not to protect me. That's my family. That's all I had left. And all of this sounds really sad. I refer to it in the book a series of unfortunate events, like the Lemony Snicket's books. But in so many ways, that in between all those little spots, God kept filling it up. Every day, every month, every moment. I can tell you in every one of those things who he put in my life, who kept me here. So then, I finally chose someone worthy, found a man who loved me, where I could feel safe for the very first time in my life. And God kept clearing my plate. Boy, ladies, if you have not realized this, I don't know where you are in your journey, but when God is talking in your ear and whispering to you, if you don't listen, he starts yelling. And he starts yelling, and he will clear his plate. If you're not going to listen and do what he's leading you to do, sometimes he's just going to he'll nicely nudge you. He'll nudge you, nudge you. And then eventually, when you don't feel strong enough to make those decisions sometimes, or you're waiting to see, oh, it's not the right time, well, he put me in bed. I had 2 surgeries, couldn't move, couldn't get up, couldn't do anything. And all those years, so after my brother, so my sister had passed away, and then 3 years later, my brother died. And he struggled severely with addiction. And I had to be the one to sit by his bedside when he had a brain aneurysm and pull him off life support and bring him home to bury him. To say I hit a wall at that moment would be an understatement. I could not pull my bootstraps up one more time. I could not look in the face of anyone that loved me, that needed me, and do a thing for them. I fell apart. And they should have put me in a hospital. And it was by the grace of God that didn't happen. 2 women took me in, and they prayed over me, and they took care of me until I got back on my feet. And I started therapy. And I don't know how many of you are in therapy. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about your program yet. I wish I had known the name and looked at it. But I literally, from that day forward, have been in therapy. I didn't go into therapy wanting to get better. I went into therapy to put a Band-Aid on my back to get back out there and get back to my life. There were people waiting on me. I had things to do. I don't want to open that door where that little girl is hiding, that's covered in the wounds of that abuse that happened to her, the people that let me down, the bad choices that I made because I was so broken. I thought, well, this won't be the worst thing that happened. I can do that. All that stuff you shove in a door. Well, I didn't go to therapy hoping to pull that door open, unluckily. I spent 10 years in therapy, and not one time would I talk about the abuse. Not one time. She tried to put me in group therapy. I got kicked out of a church group therapy. Bears to say. I avoided everything that made me deal with what was behind that door. And I would go in, we'd slap a Band-Aid on it, and I'd get back out to my life. Well, then here I am in bed, and I'm thinking about all those things that sweet lady had asked me to do. And I kept thinking, God, if you're not going to let me up and you're not going to let me over this, I'll try. So it wasn't a brave moment. People keep talking about being brave to tell your story and write a book. I don't think a lot of the things that happened in our lives because we woke up and thought we were from Braveheart, the movie. We're not waking up trying to conquer the world. It is one simple urging in your ear to listen to that voice and do what he asks you to do. And what he was asking me to do was to write those letters. In therapy, they talk about writing the letters. Who hurt you? Get out a piece of paper. Let's talk to that person. You don't have to talk to him. Write it down. Write the letter to those people. And I avoided those letters all of those years. I'm laying there in that bed, sick, couldn't move, waiting for my next surgery. I thought, if you are not going to leave me alone, I will do it. So I wrote a letter to my brother that abused me. I wrote a letter to my sister, who was my whole world, that I lost. I wrote a letter to my brother that I had lost, who I loved with everything in me. And I wrote a letter to little Pam, that little girl. I was not strong enough to write the letter to my mom. I was not. And I wrote what ended up being the introduction when I just read to you. I wrote that. And I couldn't tell you why I was writing it. I thought, well, okay. And I didn't die. I cracked open that door, a little air out of the door, and I didn't explode. No one died. I lived through it. And as God does, he put another person in my life out of the blue. A guy I went to high school with who had a really tough time, had started his own publishing company, I swear. And he posted something on Facebook that said he was going to start an author coaching program. And I saw it, and I still ignored it because, I certainly would never do that. And he sent me a message. And he said, I don't know why God laid you on my heart. I don't know if you know somebody, but I want you to know I was praying for you this morning. and I wanted to reach out to you. And so after I cried for a long time, I sent him those words. And he called me crying, and he said, Is this you? This is somebody I had known my whole life. And so when I was captain of the cheerleading squad, and I was running all these church things, and I was everything everybody thought that I was this little girl. And after we got past all the tears and all of that, he asked if he could help me write my story. So it wasn't a huge, brave thing. It was me, to be honest, I think testing God as much as I was testing myself. If I really believed for the first time in my life that if I went out on that tree limb, that it wouldn't break off and kill me, because I wasn't sure. After all the days in church, after all the sermons, after all the prayers, I still didn't believe he'd catch me if I fell. And he did. He did in such a sweet and amazing way. Because once again, he put someone in my life who would hold my hand and walk me through it. I didn't have to do it by myself. And so I started writing, and I kept thinking, I don't know. I really don't think I'll ever put this out, because there's some embarrassing stuff in this book. I made a decision that if I was going to write it, like everything else in my life, I'd be just as hard on myself. And I did not do this gracefully. There is no one more broken in this room, probably, in my mind, in my eyes, still, after all this time, than me. And I have spent my whole life believing that we brought our best to God. I went to a Southern Baptist church where we would literally get inspected before we left the house. I had on my Sunday best. You better have your ears clean. You better be ready to visit God. And they will scare you into heaven. And so there is no way that broken little girl felt worthy for that. So all those years, I spent pretending that God loved me, pretending that he would be there for me, that I knew. I would say the words, I would sing the songs, I would do whatever anyone asked me to do, but I didn't believe it. Until I had to sit down and write an accounting of what that man, that spirit, the man that loves me more than anybody else will ever love me, did for me. Because he never left me alone. He put person after event. I was the scared one. I was the one that didn't believe it. I was the one that wouldn't take the steps. And when I did, there is a feeling that starts to come over you of healing that is indescribable to people who don't feel broken. The person I've always tried to be, I didn't have to pretend to be it anymore. To be honest, I really wasn't pretending most of the time. It's who I was. I just felt so unworthy, I wasn't willing to accept it. I think that our lives often are what we think they're supposed to look like in our own eyes. I think we come out, if you decide when you get baptized, you come out of the waters and you think, oh gosh, that's over with. Things are going to be good now. No. It gets harder because your expectations of the people around you, the expectations of yourself change. What you want for your life changes, and it is hard. It is hard to be the strongest person in the room sometimes. It's hard to be the person that says no. So, in a lot of ways, I think that's the problem with how we view healing and restoration. We expect that one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel good. I'm going to feel healed. It's all going to be better now. I'm going to be 50 years old next year. And I don't expect that there's going to be any more days that I don't feel that way. It is a battle to stay in a state of healing, in a state of restoration. I get up every day. The difference is, I know now, it is not my job. It is not my responsibility. It's my job to get up and to turn it over to God, to go right back over that limb that I was scared to get on top of, and to step out there and go, okay, I'm here. You asked me to do this. You said if I got out here, you'd be here with me. You do it. And that's what this was about. There's a lot of embarrassing things in here. And I don't have the energy to be embarrassed about it anymore. And it is not because I'm brave. It is not because I set out thinking, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to get up and talk in front of people and I'm going to, all these great things are going to happen. It is because God has shown up over and over and over again in my life in the places where I felt the most wounded, the most alone, and the most forgotten. And he showed up and he did great things. That little girl who did everything she could do to mess up her life is married to an amazing man. We have 8 kids. 3 of mine, 5 of mine. I didn't have 8. Let's be clear. I had 3. He has 5. We have 3 of the 8 still left at home. My oldest son serving in the Navy. I have my first grandbaby. And out of all the things that he poured love and restoration in, do you know who I moved into my home to take care of? My mom. We have no family. And my dad, when he got sick, I'm convinced he held on as long as he did because he knew what he was asking me to do. And there are days where I look at that woman and think, I can't do this today. Our road is not always easy. But I can look at her most days and look at her the way God sees her. And that came from walking out onto the limb and writing that book. Because I never thought about it from her perspective. I never even thought about it from a brother's perspective, to be honest. That's a hard one to face. My brother is 6 years older than me. So if I was 4, why would a little boy, 10 years old, abuse his siblings like that? One of these days, I'll be brave enough to ask him. My mom is not really sorry. Okay? There's not going to be a lot of healing and restoration there. What she wants is someone to take care of her. And although every day I don't love her the way I want to, and the way I think God calls me to, I love God enough to do what he asks me to do. So it is a process. I am a process. I think God wants you to know that you're a process, and you don't have to feel healed every day. You don't have to feel prepared. You don't have to feel ready. But you do have to ask for the help and listen to what he tells you to do. Whatever that is. If he's calling you when you get through this program to help other women get through this program, listen to that voice, because it gets loud if you don't. I am very, very, very thankful for all those scars because they have made me who I want to be. I wouldn't choose those things. There are going to be things in your life when you start looking back, and oh my Lord, I would have never. I'm not saying I'm thankful that I was abused or that I picked many bad men and many other things that I did. But I am thankful that I never gave up on that little girl. I'm very thankful that I know God is never going to give up on that little girl. And there is no one who wants you to succeed more than him. Every one of us has that girl. You cannot get through this life without wounds, without scars, without disappointments. And that little girl, whatever she is to you, is hiding and waiting and begging for you to let her out and for you to love her and to show her she's not alone. Because I believe, out of all the things that he showed me in writing this book over and over again. I had to drive myself back from Canada, 18 years old, in 1990. We didn't have cell phones or GPS. I had a highlighter and a pen. And it's a terrible, wonderful story. But each of you sitting in this room have your own story. How you got here. Whether it's because of disappointment, whether it's abuse, whether it's difficulty with family. Maybe it's just that, it's easy to make bad choices. I would encourage every one of you to get out a piece of paper and to write your letters. Even if you can't write letters to the people that you feel wounded you, write a letter to your little girl. You remind her that she is loved. You remind her that she's worthy. You remind her that she's beautiful. And you remind her that no one gets to choose what happens to her for the rest of her life. And that's all I got. Yes, I would be happy to. Lord, I don't even know where to start tonight. My heart is so full. I am so incredibly thankful for every person in this room. I'm so thankful God led every one of them here. I prayed all day that I would listen to your Spirit, that I would hear the words that you needed for me to say for them. I hope for restoration. I pray for your guidance, and I pray for your love wherever deeply that love is needed in every one of these people. I pray that they leave this room and they remember how they felt God's Spirit in this room tonight when we sang and when we cried. Lead them into their lives and be with them. Hold their hand. Remind them that they're beautiful and they're loved and that you have a great plan for their life. Teach them to listen to that still small voice. Thank you for the work that they are doing in this church. I pray that people come and help them, come be with them, come help them serve. We love you. And I am incredibly thankful that you never leave me alone. And I remind these women and the people here that they're never alone. Take us into this week and be with us. We love you. Amen.
If you're joining us on Facebook or if you're watching this at any time, I just want to remind you, this is Pamela Chastain, and the book is Who Do You See? And it's available on Amazon and I think Google Books has it too. Definitely on Amazon, easy to find. You can find a link to it on our Facebook page. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and sign off now. Pamela, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.